Let's talk about the Anthony Fauci dog torture experiments. I'm sure within the past few days you've all read the articles, seen the pictures about this thing, and I basically just want to, first of all, give you the facts as straight as I can, just to make sure we're all on the same page, because there's been a lot of conflicting information about this thing. And then I want to sort of examine the social and philosophical and political underpinnings of this thing, because I think it's a good one particular instance of a news story which we can use to examine the larger social war that is going on right now, and perhaps extract some maxims, some consistent things which we see across all these stories, so we can actually get an understanding, a bird's eye view of the social war. So first off, like I said, the facts of the case. This was a set of experiments funded to the tune of $400,000 by the National Institute of Health, the NIH. Particularly, it was funded by the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, the NIAID, which is a subset of the NIH that is headed by Anthony Fauci. By the way, spoiler alert, that's probably why, the only reason we're actually talking about this case. But I digress. The experiments took place at the University of Georgia in the US, and they involved using biting sandflies to infect 28 otherwise totally healthy beagles with a parasite that they then tried to use an experimental drug to cure them of the parasitical infection. Now, after what was described as months of pain for the dogs, it turns out it was like 3 to 4 months, the dogs were eventually put down and the drug was deemed ineffective. And one other point that I will add is that the dogs seem to have been bred in captivity for use in experimentation. The NIH says when they need to do experiments on dogs, they tend to use beagles. One, just so they can have a consistent set, they always use the same animal. And two, because they said they're smaller, more docile, therefore easier to handle in the experimentation. And these weren't bred at the university. They were bred elsewhere and then purchased for the experiment. So I presume that's where some of the $400,000 went, along with equipment and salaries, presumably. Now, why is this case being talked about? Why is this a big case right now? Now, I put it to you, and trust me, I have no love for Anthony Fauci. I'm a guy who didn't wear a mask for the past 2 years, so trust me when I say I'm not coming from his side. I have no love lost for him. I don't particularly care about him. I think that we should examine things more in terms of power structures in institutions rather than dealing with these totemic or these idols of individual people that we tend to do in the U.S. For all the talk of the "Let's Go Brandon" thing, I think it just puts way too much focus. It displays that people in the U.S. are putting way too much focus on individual people, and they're not thinking about larger power structures, banks, media, things like that. But anyways, I digress. I basically just say that to say I have no love lost for Anthony Fauci, but I think the entire purpose of this whole dog torture experiment story that they're trying to shill is just political opportunism. It is nothing more than an attack, a slander on Anthony Fauci. And the purpose of it being simply, if he were to try to do something political in the future, his efforts would be hindered because hopefully he would be pegged as the dog torture guy. That is the only possible explanation for this getting as much coverage as it does. And I suspect this is the case because there are so many other instances of even worse dog experiments that have gone on in the past. But of course, they didn't get coverage because they weren't tied to Anthony Fauci. This is nothing more than an attack, a slander against a political opponent. Nobody actually cares about the experiment that was going on itself per se, because they don't care about any of these other dog torture experiments. It's just a fact of the matter that if you are a country which says we are going to be okay with it, if it is in an effort to help humans, we think the benefits outweigh the costs, we're going to be okay sometimes with animal experimentation. You're necessarily going to sometimes come up on instances where some people think you went too far. And this just happens to be one where a lot of people think they went too far, mostly based on pictures, and it is tied to a political opponent. So it's going to go gangbusters. That is the long and short of it. That is the entire political context of it, if you ask me. Now, in another instance, another thing, if, basically this was only going to get coverage because it had to do with dog torture. Anthony Fauci could have done something much worse, and it wouldn't have gotten as much coverage as this. Like, for instance, he might have committed perjury to Congress because of lying about gain-of-function research. You know, it's come out also recently that he knew of gain-of-function research that was going on in his lab, and he told Congress that none of that was happening. So he committed perjury. This is a much larger case. This is an instance where he actually did something illegal that he should be going to jail for, as opposed to the experiments, which he was only, you know, although he was the head, he wasn't directly doing the experiments himself, and they weren't illegal. Why is this a bigger case? This is the question I think we need to examine. Why is this a bigger case? Now, I think I will make the case to you that this basically has to do simply with the extremely simple way in which the masses use morality, the extremely simple way in which the morality of the masses exist. I put forth basically that there are multiple levels of morality, like multiple different moralities, and that the lowest, the most normie among us basically only shares in the basest level of morality, which we could basically just call empathy. You see, some people think that, that Rousseau had this idea that in a state of nature, he was refuting Hobbes's idea that state of nature was life was nasty, short, and brutish. He was refuting his idea, and he was trying to basically say that morality can exist in a state of nature. And what he said was basically all that needs to exist is empathy in order for moralistic actions to start taking place, in order for actions which resemble moral thinking to start taking place. Basically, if you can put yourself in another creature's place, you wouldn't want to see them tortured. And we can extrapolate from this empathy, from this ability to place yourself in the position of another creature and not wanting to see them harmed. We can extrapolate a whole slew of simplistic moral actions. And Rousseau then, of course, argues because of this, life in a state of nature was actually probably very nice, and it was actually only civilization and the introduction of infinitely more material wealth that actually created inequality among men, and then allowed them to actually, basically their greed would allow them to surmount their empathy, their basic morality, which is nothing more than empathy. In a state of nature, you wouldn't have enough to steal from this one guy in order to surmount your empathetic reaction. However, once you get civilization, once the material wealth of the world increases such that this guy can have 10,000 times more than you, well, then you will probably be able to override this empathetic reaction that you would have to, killing this guy and taking his stuff. But anyways, I digress. The point I'm making is most people these days, or at least the masses, the people in the masses, I think they only have this basic level of morality. So when people say, like, I've heard people say about this case, this is really gonna wake the masses up. This is gonna make them see Anthony Fauci is a bad guy, and that, then they'll relate it back to all the other bad stuff that he's been doing the past 2 years. He was obviously complicit in he recommended the lockdowns, the extrajudicial lockdowns, keeping everybody in their houses for the past 2 years and shutting down all their businesses, destroying the middle class, and enriching further the 1%. He was complicit in all this, and he pushed it, and this dog torture story is gonna make people see that. But of course it's not. Of course this is not gonna wake the normies up. This is not gonna make them see that Fauci and his organization has been pushing these dangerous things for the past 2 years, because they didn't get it in the past 2 years. They're not gonna get it now. And their morality does not allow for things beyond this. They don't have anything beyond this animalistic morality, which is simply empathy. In order for them to partake in this higher level of morality, which people have, they would need to consider it in regards to higher concepts of freedom and liberty and things like that. And they clearly do not. They clearly are incapable. They clearly only have this animalistic level of empathy. And it is animalistic in the sense that other animals also have it. A dog is distressed emotionally at seeing not just another dog, but another human or any other animal tortured, because they can see themselves in its place, and they want to avoid that. So it imparts this strong emotional feeling on them. And most people only share in this basic level of morality, which is nothing but empathy. They don't have the higher levels of morality, which allow them to see these things that Anthony Fauci was engaging in as immoral. So no, this is not going to wake the normies up. They have the lowest, weakest level of morality possible. They're almost amoral because it is nothing but empathy. So that's the long and short of it. Dog torture case. It's unfortunate, but they thought they were doing it for a good reason. It's not like it was some crazy thing taking place in a far-off country where they were just wantonly torturing dogs. It was just a political opportunism. It is a slander against Fauci in order to try to hurt his political actions in the future. That is it. But it is good as a way to examine this one battlefield in the context of the larger social war, in the hopes that once you see a lot of these things repeated over and over again, you get sort of a bird's eye view of the larger social war. So anyways, thank you all for watching, and have a good day.